One of the questions we get a lot when we talk to people about democratic education is what about state exams? What about the leaving cert? What about points? What about the CAO? And I suppose there's a short answer to that and there's a long answer. The short answer is yes, we do facilitate state exams if a student chooses it. Okay, so, and it's interesting to note that internationally, democratic schools tend to have higher than average rates of third level entry, which is interesting. And they seem to have a lot of success when they go to university as well, presumably because they chose that path for themselves and they're internally motivated towards that. But I think it's important to kind of zoom out on that problem as well and kind of put that in context. One interesting thing is that a lot of people aren't aware that there are other ways of pursuing third level or different forms of education outside of school. There's an overlap between the homeschooling community and democratic people who are interested in democratic education, and that community has been solving these problems for a long time as homeschoolers. So they know about QQI courses, which I still call FETAC, so which are courses that people can do in community center or community colleges around the country, and you can level up through the system, slowly progressing towards third level. Now it's complicated; it's hard to summarize in a short video, but there's lots of pathways up through the levels and eventually into third level. Um, there is also the popular route of being a mature student. So once you become 23 years old, you become a mature student and you can apply for university course and not necessarily have a leaving cert. So that's quite popular. And in fact, I think there's an argument for that, depending on a person's situation and who they are, to doing your own thing up until the age of 23 and then deciding, okay, I want to study something really deeply. So I think that's really powerful. Um, Having said all that, I'd like to zoom out again and maybe go back to my story, my background, or what I do every day as a mainstream teacher. Um, the reason I went from being someone who's interested in democratic education to someone who's committed to it was through my process of giving calculated grades and being involved in the Leaving Cert in general. It's by no means the only reason, but I think I just remember like writing down letters or like and ranking students, and like those things that I wrote down on a page would define a lot of how successful their education was. And I think there's something a bit ridiculous about that 14 years of schooling could be summarized into 7 letters. I just think if that's all you have at the end of an education, then that's a pretty poor education. And not that there's anything wrong with those letters, but the fact that it sums everything up is just horrendous to me. Um, so I think a democratic school really, to understand democratic education, you have to go, okay, what's the educational experience? How are they actually developed as people? What kind of self-knowledge do they have? What kind of opportunities have they had to do work experience and to explore their talents so that by the time they leave democratic education, they can make a really good decision as to which way they want to go, or at least where they want to start. And I think that's really what we're about. So democratic schools are very, very flexible. We can facilitate state exams, and in other schools that seems to go very well. We can also provide other routes. We can coach them through that, or maybe work with students to navigate that space as well, and also maybe give people the skills they need to maybe not be so dependent on necessarily going on to third level. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. Thank you. Any comments or any questions would be really welcome.